battle droids, bug splatter, and a lot of screen shake. These are just a few of the things that Star Wars Republic Commando delivers during its roughly 12-hour playtime. But is it 12 hours well spent, or 12 hours better spent elsewhere? Welcome, my name's Azadash and welcome to another PC game retrospective video. A few months ago I covered the 2002 console game Star Wars The Clone Wars. One of the comments that I made in the video, which was later robustly discussed in the comments, was that there were no PC tie-in games for Attack of the Clones, with my opinion being, and still remaining, that Republic Commando serves as a Revenge of the Sith tie-in game as opposed to an Attack of the Clones one. Regardless of where it falls in the timeline of movie tie-ins, it no doubt provides a relatively unique gameplay perspective with the player assuming control of a squad leader of Republic Commandos. Now, my original experience with this game was playing it upon release in March 2005, several months prior to the third movie installment releasing. Normally, if I go back to an older game that I've played, there's an overwhelming sense of familiarity. And look, there was some familiarity here, but there was also a lot more in the way of narration and environmental storytelling that I hadn't picked up on originally, but having now seen the movie, have a much greater appreciation for. While many Star Wars games were released for several platforms in the early 2000s, Republic Commando was only released for the Xbox and PC, with it only coming to the PS4 and Switch over a decade later. I don't know if this was a licensing decision or more of a technical one, however, with a PC release making it not exactly only for Xbox, I suspect it may have been a technical decision, especially given the Xbox's ability to overachieve in the graphics department when compared to other 6th generation consoles. The version we are playing today is the PC version, which is presently available on most digital storefronts. In addition to the base game, I am using a community mod called the Republic Commando Fix, which, as the name suggests, fixes a few things and includes widescreen support. There was talk of a sequel with a working title of Star Wars Imperial Commando, but apart from some concept art, the game itself never progressed further, which I think is disappointing, as Republic Commando's formula was definitely very solid, and with the events of the third film, certainly left more stories to tell. Alas, the only real sequel we got was the 2005 mobile game known as Republic Commando Order 66, which sees the player hunt down a variety of Jedi. Needless to say, it's about as good as you would expect an early mobile game to be. In terms of story, Republic Commando takes place between episodes 2 and 3, with the player assuming the role of boss, a leader of Republic Commandos. Now, while Commandos may look similar to the regular clone troopers, they are far from the same. In addition to getting access to a variety of special weapons and equipment, including the ability to use Bacta recharge stations, Commandos undergo special training and are often reserved for special high-risk missions. The story follows a 3-act approach and begins in the familiar location of Geonosis, with the player being tasked with performing various objectives to help cripple the Separatists' war effort, ranging from eliminating a high-ranking lieutenant to sabotaging a battle droid factory. From here, the story branches out and delves into a bit more of your character's backstory, with a fairly extensive chapter taking place on a Republic cruiser, before the game sends you to Kashyyyk to help the Wookiees to help set the scene for one of Episode 3's subplots. Overall, I think the story is really good. There's a lot of character development done within your squad, and while there are some appearances of mainstream characters, the majority of main characters are entirely original and all really well done. Perhaps my only criticism of the story is it relies a little too much on the movie locations of Geonosis and Kashyyyk, with about 70% of the game being spent there and only 30% of the new location of the Republic cruiser, which in my opinion is not only the best looking chapter of the game, but offers up some of the best gameplay, with it starting off with horror vibes before breaking out into a full-blown shoot-'em-up with some appropriately high stakes. Before we continue, a massive thank you to those who support the channel. If you enjoy this content, please consider liking the video or subscribing to the channel. With that out of the way, let's put on our helmet, head to our dropship, and head back to 2005 to remember Republic Commando. By the early 2000s, we were starting to see a fair bit of innovation in the first-person shooting genre. Soldier of Fortune featured a revolutionary damage system, Doom 3 delivered an atmospheric masterpiece, and Republic Commando delivered a squad system. Now, while there were games that supported allies and squad-based interfaces before, such as the very questionable Daikatana, none of them did a great job of integrating the mechanic into the gameplay. Republic Commando, on the other hand, does an excellent job of integrating the squad mechanic right into the shooting interface, meaning that the player never needs to take their eyes off the action when issuing commands. In terms of the commands, there's formation, offensive, and defensive commands you can give, with many of the commands displaying a sort of hologram in the area the command can be performed. For example, if you want one of your squad mates to begin sniping, you'll see an outline of where they can snipe next to some cover. If you want to give the command for the squad mate to heal, you'll see an outline of where they go to heal. Then there's scenarios which can have multiple outlines depending on the action being performed. For example, when approaching a locked door, you have the option to hack it open or blow it open, each with their own advantages. Hacking disables any turrets beyond the door, but won't give you a tactical advantage against other opposition. Breaching the door will result in a grenade being thrown in to stun or disorient enemies, but will leave the squad vulnerable to turrets. There's no perfect solution here, however, I generally favoured breaching except in areas where I knew there was a heavy concentration of turrets. When you're not providing direct guidance to your squad, they are pretty self-sufficient, with them generally sticking fairly close to you and engaging enemies as appropriate. Probably the only time I felt my squad mates were useless was when encountering some of the game's mini-bosses, although these mini-bosses have their own challenges, more on this later. A lot of the squad-based activities are best navigated using the tactical mode on the player's visor, which adds some additional information on the heads-up display. You can disable this mode for a little more of a cleaner look or put the visor into a night mode vision, useful in dark areas. And while all of these options have utility, one cosmetic option I found myself changing fairly soon after starting my playthrough was removing the helmet overlay from the heads-up display. Now, as I said, this is purely cosmetic, but I found it a little more enjoyable having a little more of the environment on the screen as opposed to the inside of the helmet. Another cosmetic choice I made was to turn screen shake off. And look, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or if I'm just used to more modern games, but I find my patience for overly exaggerated and excessive screen shaking games has evaporated over the years to the extent that if I have an option to turn it off, I often will. The good news is that Republic Commando does offer quite a lot in the way of options, meaning that you can customize the game's look and feel to whatever you like best. In general, the camera and control, which play an important role in supporting the squad mechanics, are very solid. However, I will say on the control side that the levels themselves are very linear, and outside of the occasional vent traversal, don't really allow for much flexibility in how you proceed forwards. There are areas that look like you should be able to pass through but are blocked by invisible barriers. However, this is all fairly consistent throughout the adventure, so it rarely causes any player confusion. Combat is a mostly solid affair, with the general flow of the game seeing the player progress through several areas with low-level enemies before encountering an area with higher-level enemies, often with more armor or shielding. You can see exactly how much health these high-level enemies have by using the visor's tactical mode. You can also order your squad mates to concentrate fire on a single target to bring them down quicker, which is very useful when dealing with these higher-level enemies. While I'm always keen for a skill check, I will say that the first of these, when you encounter beam weapon-wielding foes, saw me die several times, mainly due to the fact that my squad mates were taken out very quickly, leaving me with limited firepower to deal with the threat. In terms of firepower, the game includes several Republic weapons, in addition to a few others that you can collect from enemies. First up is the DC-10 blaster, a small blaster with limited firepower but quite good accuracy. It features a self-charging ammo cell, meaning that while you will never run out of ammo, there is a delay between each shot. In general, if you have to resort to using this during combat, the odds are probably against you. Alas, its accuracy does make every shot count. Next up is the DC-17 modifiable blaster rifle. Now I say modifiable because as you collect various attachments for it, it's able to convert into both a sniper and grenade launcher. Its vanilla blaster function is by far and away the most common configuration you'll use throughout the game, and offers an interesting mixture of trade-offs. Firstly, as is somewhat true to other media, the accuracy of this weapon is not good. You can hit large targets just fine, but anything that moves quickly or has a slight frame can be hard to hit at anything beyond close range. Now this is somewhat made up for by having a fairly rapid fire and generous clip size, but the accuracy is a handicap that will stay with you throughout the entire campaign, encouraging you to work with your squad mates on downing powerful foes where possible. One function that has no problems with accuracy is the sniper mode. This delivers a fairly powerful single shot at the cost of a 1 or so second delay between each shot. It's certainly not a one-shot kill to the more powerful enemies, but several sustained shots will generally down them. The only challenge is that ammo is far less abundant than the blaster function, meaning you often need to pick and choose its use carefully. The last function on the DC-17 is the grenade launcher attachment, which can down most higher level enemies in one shot. However, it holds very limited ammo with a relatively scarce amount found in the game, meaning it's often best reserved as a Hail Mary when you're feeling overwhelmed. As I said, there are other weapons you can collect throughout the game, such as a beam weapon, a discount shotgun, and even a Wookiee bowcaster. And all of these are fairly useful, however ammo is generally rationed to specific areas, forcing you to return to using your blaster rifle for the majority of the adventure. The combat also includes grenades, and here's a funny story. For the first few levels, I very rarely came across grenades and spent the majority of the time looking at a big 0 next to my grenade indicator. Then I picked up some grenades and realised the number didn't change. Intrigued, I decided to check the manual, only to realise that there are different grenade types and you need to use a key press to switch between them. Clearly my memory wasn't quite brilliant on this part of the game. Alas, once I did realise you can hold various types, I found them much more useful, as certain types of grenades have certain functions, such as stunning robotic enemies or dealing higher damage to biological ones. Oh, and there is a melee attack which will pretty much one-shot any biological enemy, and this is very useful in close quarters combat, complete with a very satisfying splat across your heads-up display, which sees some type of sonic screen wiper clear it off. Overall, the weapons support the game's combat mechanics quite well, although there is one exception, and that's the mini-bosses. There are a handful of mini-bosses in the game, which deal very high damage and have almost comically large health pools, which your weapons outside of the limited ammo grenade launcher just can't do enough sustained damage to easily defeat. I would have preferred the game introduce a puzzle mechanic or something in these sections, as it's not just the difficulty spike of dealing with these enemies, but the fact that frankly it's pretty boring and certainly feels like a wasted opportunity. Outside of the squad mechanics, the game doesn't really do anything overly special, but at the same time, what it does do, it does well. Couple this with a very consistent gameplay experience from start to finish, and while Republic Commando doesn't win any awards for its gameplay, it's certainly a very solid gameplay experience. Graphically, the game is definitely one of the better looking games to release in 2005, with quite a bit of detail being put into the lighting to create realistic representations of the environments. Likewise, despite the game featuring quite few in-game locations, there's decent variety in the actual level design and geometry, meaning that the player never really realises that they're stuck in one spot for too long. Praise must also be given to the sheer amount of presentation options, with everything from the helmet to screen shake being fully customizable, allowing players to set the presentation to an experience which best suits them. As far as performance goes, I never encountered any type of issue on modern hardware, and looking back at some of the Xbox footage, I can't spot any obvious slowdown, suggesting the developers were able to optimize the game very well for their target hardware. The only real blemish on the presentation is how some of the story intermissions are handled, with large text-based exposition dumps simply cycling over a black background. Given the game does feature quite good first-person cutscenes, it's disappointing that they didn't opt for this approach to deliver this messaging. One area virtually free of blemishes is the sound design. The game's music is a blend of existing Star Wars tunes with some new ones created for the game. The main menu music is a good example of the overall tone of the game, and from the moment the game loads gives players a hint of what's to come. Effects are also really good, with everything sounding just as you would expect it to. However, the best part of the audio design is without a doubt the voice acting.
Alone against all these droids? They don't stand a chance. What happened here?
I'm not sure. I was scanning the maintenance corridors when I heard blaster fire. By the time I got to where the noise was, everyone was dead.
So you came to the torpedo bay to hide?
No, sir. I was trying to launch a torpedo and alert the Republic. But you're here now, so no need for that, eh?
Tamora Morrison delivers an exceptional performance as a squad leader, with a great set of co-stars and thoughtful writing, helping to elevate the entire audio experience and ensure you will remember the lines long after the final credits have rolled. Republic Commando, while a very linear experience from start to finish, is a remarkably polished experience. If I had to sum up one thing the game does best, it would be momentum. From the moment you start the game, you are thrust into battle and then guided through various locations and meetings until you reach the conclusion of one objective and begin the next. There's just very little downtime given to the player, and in the context of what the developer was aiming for, it works really well. You don't have time to poke around and dwell on the linearity when there's always a reason to be moving forward. I also think the developers really nailed the game's perspective, with everything from the bug splat on the visor to it being scrambled when attacked by specific droids, all small little details that do have a pretty big impact to overall immersion. Sadly, it's been a very long time since we got a new story-focused first-person Star Wars game, and at the time of recording this, there are none on the future release schedule. Star Wars shooters are one of my favourite genre, and while I am disappointed that there are none currently in the works, I am thankful there's a pretty good back catalogue from the 90s and early 2000s to go back to. But that's enough from me. Do you agree or disagree with my opinions? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.